You have been ahead of the curve on so many of these issues for so long. Increasing the minimum wage, free tuition, LGBTQ rights. You've been talking about universal health care since Star Wars A New Hope was in theaters in 1978. Essentially, what you've been doing for the past 40 years is just doing what I do with my kids. Put on your shoes. Hey, put your shoes on. Stop. Put your shoes on. Put your shoes on. Please, for the love of God, put your shoes on.
The healthcare is a right of all of its people.
That healthcare is a right of all people. Healthcare is a right of all people. Healthcare is a right of all people. Healthcare is a right of all people.
You've been saying put your shoes on for the past 40 years. Senator Sanders, do you ever feel like blowing your brains out?
Occasionally.
Because my daughter is in the first grade. She hasn't even gotten to the first grade. And
Sounds like you feel like blowing your brains out.
Daily, Senator Sanders.
Don't do it. It's not the solution to the problem. Look.
Hurry right away, no delay, stop today. Make your daddy glad to have had such a lad. Tell your sweetheart not to mind. We proud our boys in line over there.
You're obviously in the Senate. Let's talk about the House. Back in April, there was a bill to approve billions in military aid for Israel that went through Congress. Out of the roughly 200 House Democrats, only 37 voted against military aid. So just so folks understand kind of the way the voting works, over 80% of House Democrats
and virtually all Republicans, I would imagine.
Correct?
Yeah.
We're good on sending
Yeah.
aid. Okay. Yesterday, I was at the United Center. You say the word ceasefire, incredible applause break. So what I'm hearing at the convention is from the Democratic Party is yay ceasefire, and simultaneously from 80% of those members of Congress, I'm also hearing yay weapons.
The convention is, thousands of people. Okay. It's a small number of people.
Right.
If you do polling today, I think if you ask a simple question and you say, do you think your taxpayer, American taxpayer dollars, should go to support the Netanyahu government and the continuation of the war? I suspect a pretty strong majority of Americans would say, no, I don't. And among Democrats, the numbers would be very high. So if your question is Congress, I think your question is, reflecting where the American people are at?
Correct.
The answer is no, they're not.
Why is that?
Well, it is the same answer that I would give you if you asked me, gee, how come every other major country on earth has healthcare as a human right and we don't? And polls show that the majority of the American people want healthcare as a human right. How come we don't tax billionaires at a higher rate when the American people think we should? And the answer to all of those questions is the same. And I tried to talk about that a little bit last night. It is the role of money in politics. So right now, both major political parties, Democrats and Republicans, are funded very heavily by the wealthiest people in this country. And if you were a billionaire and you wanted to start a super PAC, you could put hundreds of millions of dollars into campaigns to defeat people who opposed you and to support your friends who will support your agenda.
2 out of those 37 House members that voted against the weapons bill were Jamal Bowman and Kori Bush.
That's right.
They recently lost their primaries. Why did they lose their primaries?
Well, that's good. And they lost their primaries because a super PAC, AIPAC, put an unprecedented amount of money. I was involved in both of their campaigns. Jamal's more than Kori's, but we helped Kori raise money. And the reason is the billionaire class does not want strong opposition to the billionaire agenda. And in Jamal, you had somebody who was strongly opposed to it. And it's not just on Israel, where his views were not probably dissimilar to mine or Kori's, but on other issues as well. So what you got, and let me repeat this because it's not talked about enough. Yeah, do we have a democracy? Yes, you can go out and vote. That's great. And please, everybody, go out and vote. Yeah. But what most of you cannot do is put hundreds of millions of dollars into a super PAC to elect candidates you want or defeat candidates you don't like. So there's a super PAC out there. They went after Jamal in an unprecedented way, defeated him. Went after Kori, defeated her. And that is the power of money in politics. And that is why it is absolutely imperative that we get rid of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United and move to public funding of elections.
Right.
This is just money. Look, it is not complicated. If you are, this gentleman over here, probably not, you're a billionaire, and you didn't like Bernie Sanders, or you don't like Cori Bush, you don't like Jamal Bowman, you can start a super PAC, Friends of America, call it whatever you want. You could take out a check, put $500 million into that check, get a few of your friends to contribute, and you go after them, put ads on TV. That's legal. That's what Citizens United allows us to do. Nothing conspiratorial about it. That is the reality of American politics. That's going on in both political parties. Check out the amount of money that billionaires are now contributing both to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And that will answer your question, I think, not only about the war in Gaza, it's why we don't have health care as a human right, why we have massive income and wealth inequality, why we have a corrupt tax system, why we are not able to send our kids to college and make it affordable, et cetera, et cetera. It's money. Money talks.
We proud for boys in line over there.
Let's talk about the mental acute 74-year-olds. There's you, okay? There's Martin Scorsese. He's good. That's it.
Now, come on.
Senator Warren, Chuck Grassley's 90 years old. I think if you stay in the Senate or the House after, let's say age 70, your age should be the percent that you pay in income tax. So Chuck Grassley's 90%. He should pay a 90% federal income tax.
Did you know actually there was a time in America back in the 1950s and 60s where the marginal tax rate was 90% on millionaires? Did you know that?
There was also something you said about like the 70s, the 80s.
Yeah.
It was also, during Reagan, it was at something.
Yeah,
70s, 80%.
much higher. That's right. That's right. Yeah, there's been a race to how much can we give away to the people who are already rich.
I'll give you this.
Okay.
One of the benefits of President Biden being the president is that we don't have to argue about whether or not he can drive. We don't have to fight with him over the driver's license. No one has to go let me drive home. This is, if I saw him driving, I'd call the cops.
Now look, I know you want to have fun here, but I just got to tell you this. I talked to the man,
Okay.
and the man is sharp. The man knows what he's talking about. He does the job.
But one of the things I thought deeply about is, and I want to say it to you, I'm actually kind of glad that you did not become president. Because I don't know how President Elizabeth Warren could have been able to stay Elizabeth Warren. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if the president can be a good person. Wanting to be president means you have to be willing to deport people, assassinate people, fund military juntas, overthrow governments. You have to be cool with dropping a nuclear weapon on a civilian population if it comes to that. How can a progressive president keep their heart pure when they have to wield the threat of force? Because I believe the paradox of the presidency is, how do you scale empathy?
It's a hard question.
Yeah.
And I take it seriously.
And by the way, there's no right or
No,
wrong.
I know.
It really is a philosophical question.
And I take it seriously even in the more limited role as a senator, because it's a position of responsibility. I have to vote more than once on bills that have mashed things together, that have things in it I hate and things in it I love. And how do you vote? Do you vote against the things you hate, or do you vote in favor of the things you love? Because they're going to move together. You're either going to get both or you're going to get none. So this same conflict is there all the time. And
It's the scale of it, though, Senator. I'll give you an example. Just with my own Indian wedding, and you know this.
oh,
Okay? With my wedding, I had to cut people out. I had to be pro-Muslim ban. There was a lot of stuff I had to do to accomplish the Bina and Hasan wedding. And I'm like, shit, I had to do it. Now scale that for a country of 300 plus million people. It's gonna get ugly.
yeah, but listen to your last line. You talked about what you did, and notice how you ended it. You said, and it felt like shit.
Yeah.
at least that means there's a moral center in there somewhere where you knew the difference. And I feel better when I know that someone is making decisions that even if they're hard and I don't agree with every part of them and there's some really awful pieces to it, I want somebody who, at their heart,
Won't go there.
really feels, won't go there.
It's interesting because as you climb that mountain, I feel like show business and politics is the same thing. You keep climbing. But you get to that part of the mountain and you're like, Puffy's here. And I'm not going to go to the room with him. You get to that point. The presidency opens a lot of those, let's call them those Puff Daddy doors, where you're just like, shit's about to go wild here.
Yeah.
Every president in my lifetime goes into office a sociopath and then leaves a war criminal. And then on the back end of it, they just end up painting or podcasting. So what's the benefit to your soul? To your soul? Because we get one ride, we get one merry-go-round.
Yeah, but the merry-go-round has got to be that you did your best. Listen,
I'm sorry, there's no right answer. There's no right answer.
When the question became, would I run for the Senate? I didn't have any ambition to be in politics. But I asked myself the question, the one that actually put it to me right at the end. Remember, I'd been in Washington. I'd set up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for President Obama. I come back, I'm going back to teaching, and people say, oh, you should run for Senate against this Republican who had the seat, who was very popular. And the question I asked myself is, how would I feel if I didn't try? And not trying is not okay. If you think the fight is important, you don't get to back up and say, you know what? It could cost me a lot to do this. I could make a lot of mistakes. I could get things wrong. I could have a lot of painful moments in this. But damn, there are some things you have to say, I'm just going to try anyway. And I think that's what happens in elected office.
So you're built for the smoke.
Yeah.
I'm not.
We proud our boys in line over there.
You walk up to Steve Jobs looking like Rufio in the movie Hook.
It's true. It's true.
And you recite the Think Different ad to Steve Jobs.
Yep.
And what does he do?
So I start saying it, and he leans in his ear like he wants me to keep going. So I'm like, okay. So I keep going. And as I'm going, he then joins in.
He harmonizes with you.
Yeah, it was crazy.
This is why you are one of the most optimistic, joyous people in the world. This is why you make such sweet films.
Thank you.
Because your dreams actually come true.
I don't know how that, because he should have told me like, okay, great, thanks, kid. I'm talking with Bob Iger. Why are you disrupting this conversation?
Steve Jobs, obviously Walter Isaacson's book,
Yes.
he's somewhat of a psycho. Had he heard this from you and, decided to walk away, you don't become John Chu, you become Wes Craven.
Yeah, could have been.
That's the equivalent of me walking up to Michael Jordan and singing I Believe I Can Fly. And then he starts singing it back to me.
Nuts. That shows how much he actually believed in that, in that campaign, in what they were doing. He's the greatest storyteller ever, because...
You really think so?
I do think so.
Oh.
Because he didn't just tell a story on a screen. He told a story and made it real life. And the way he doesn't sell something to you. He's like, hey, I have this thing in my pocket. You want me to show you? Because I had this problem with my photos and I couldn't figure it out, but I think I figured it out. You want to see that? Yeah. And you were just like drawn and like, yeah, I had that same problem and I need that. And to me, so clear, so authentic, which I know that's an overused word, but like there's nothing more true than him. He's not polished.
All right, just say that. Let's just quiz you. Do you know the Think Different ad?
I do know it.
Say it.
I do know it. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things different. They're not fond of rules and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race. You have to pause there. Forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius because the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do.
He nailed it. Okay, let's do State Farm.
I don't know the State Farm one, unfortunately. Go ahead.
Like a good neighbor.
State Farm is there.
There we go.
There you go.
Let's do AutoZone. Get in the zone.
AutoZone.
There we go.
Yep. I like farmers.
What's farmers? Get to farmers.
We are farmers.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Me and my kids do that all the time.
In 2016, when you were trying to sell Crazy Rich Asians to studios, Netflix offered to make the movie plus 2 sequels.
Yes.
So 3 movies.
Yes.
Then Warner Brothers, when you called back, offered you less money and no sequels.
Correct. Yes.
So the general consensus was probably to go with Netflix.
Yes.
And you could see how by going with Netflix and having a 3-picture deal, you've essentially guaranteed yourself a franchise.
Yes. And a lot of eyeballs all around the world.
But you decided to go with Warner Brothers.
Yes.
Why the fuck would you do this?
That's exactly what my agent said.
But what gave you the guts and the courage we're talking about?
Yeah.
How did you calculate this? Because you didn't have a lot of time.
We didn't have a lot of time.
Everybody turned to you.
Yes, they're looking at me, and I'm thinking, and we actually talked out loud. We said, "What? Hey, why don't we get all this money we're about to get, and we could take a percentage and donate that to Asian American causes in media?"
Sure.
Great. Now everybody wins. And I'm like, well, what's the point of giving money to Asian Americans in media? Oh, so that someone can make a decision that we are at right now. And you're like, oh, because there is value in putting something on the screen. It's like we get to go to the block party,
yes.
But who gets to go into the museum and get framed and have a light on it and have promotion in all the subways and all the public transportation and say, come see the most beautiful thing you could ever see. That the mechanism of a company to do that, to tell the world, that's storytelling, was nothing that we had never had that opportunity.
The ritual.
Yeah.
Well, what is it? It's a testament to what you talk about, and it's a philosophical idea of commitment. Yep. Page 230, I mean, you lay this idea of commitment out on page 230. You said, it bothered me. You go, it bothered me that Netflix asked for no commitment from the people who watched its movies. I mean, that's the whole point of a subscription service with auto renewal, to make you forget that you've committed to anything at all. You said commitment again. According to one of the few metrics that Netflix was willing to share, watching a movie for just 2 minutes counted as a view. 2 minutes, you spend longer in a drive-through. God damn. You emptied the fucking clip.
Listen, let me tell you, I love Netflix. I love them. I want to work there someday at some point, but it's not really for what I do in terms of I've grew up loving movies, turning off your phone, sitting in the dark with strangers.
Is there a world where you would ever, as a filmmaker, make a film for streaming? Or do you think it's antithetical to what film is?
I think there's a world where that could happen. I just think I need to be somehow motivated because the money's not motivating, no matter what it is. I make movies because it is it's a process that I need to do. It's how I breathe. I've done it since I was 10 years old. And so the adrenaline of, is the audience going to show up? What are they going to get from this? Yeah. I'm asking them to come into the dark to hear me for 2 hours. Like, to me, that is the game. That is what I love.
And that spoke to me as a live performer.
Yeah.
There is literally a commitment by putting your shoes on, getting in the car, getting in a theater, having to put your phone on airplane mode and be like, okay, for better or for worse, I am here to submit to what is about to happen for the next 2 hours.
When you have a streaming movie, it alleviates a lot of stress. You're like, oh, reviewers don't matter. Oh, the numbers, they don't even give. So you get to make your thing and you get to move on with your life. That's not fulfilling to me. That's not me getting better. That's not me playing in the game of storytelling. That's me just making something and like giving it to the algorithm to go figure out what to do with it.
We've gone through a lot, but I haven't taken a moment here to talk about Wicked. Mm-hmm. Can I take a minute to gush?
Sure. Please. Are you going to read comments from somebody in Wicked?
No. I want to give you your flowers.
Thank you.
I just want to say I loved the singing.
Thank you.
I loved Cynthia and Ariana.
Come on.
They were a tour de force and truly a breath of oxygen. Michelle Yeoh, as always, amazing. The dance numbers, utterly spectacular.
Christopher Scott, yes, thank you.
You had this thing where it was like a turbine and it didn't chop anyone's head off. You did a whole Vanity Fair thing on that.
Yes.
The fact that people came out not beheaded, it was truly spectacular.
Thank you, thank you.
I love your cinematographer and the fact that you guys continue to work together.
Alice Brooks, she's the best. Thank you.
There were so many practical effects and it wasn't just CGI. Thank you for making a movie.
Thank you.
Real and practical.
There's still a lot of CG, but yeah, it's great.
I thought that the goat that was a professor was super adorable.
Yes, Peter Dinklage.
CGI goats can be very terrifying. If you watch The Little Mermaid, it's fucking awful. I love that it was homage to the original work, but you added all these creative new elements.
Thank you, Christina Dina.
I think it's a deeply political movie. I think you really, some of the messaging about people turning on the animals, I think it was a middle finger and subtext to the Trump administration and the comments they made about the Haitian community. You don't have to answer that, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I also loved that you paved the way for future people to make musicals and potentially a Bollywood dance movie.
Thank you. I'll accept these tulips.
I have some more to actually give you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say thank you, man, for always just being a great friend.
Appreciate
and
you.
A mentor and a colleague.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, this is amazing.
Sorry, there's more flowers. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
There's more flowers.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks. We keep listening to the soundtrack, and we just can't stop. And we've actually been listening to that soundtrack more than the original soundtrack, even though I love Adina and the original cast.
I love them too.
But
yes.
What you guys did was truly amazing.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to give you flowers. Thank you so much for going on Twitter and just saying, hey, turn the volume to 7, not 6.4 in the theaters.
It's true. Why are they turning it any lower? The reference is 7.
Andrea, he's trying to make the theater experience as good as possible.
We mix at a 7. Just put it at a 7, then we
Put it at a 7.
Then we do it intended.
John Chu, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Be proud of boys in line over there.
What is your goal with the Amazon lawsuit? And why do you hate convenience? Yeah. Thanks.
Here you go.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Sorry. I don't know if this doesn't trigger you or anything like that. But I needed to order something. Okay. All right. Come to daddy. Sorry about that. I was thirsty. Okay. I know you're not allowed to talk about the case, right?
Just at a high level, but it is in litigation.
Right. So, just for the record, if you have access to Jeff Bezos' text messages, blink once.
We did a thorough investigation, got data and info from everywhere. Companies are actually required to preserve records. And as our team recently argued in court, unfortunately, executives haven't always abided by that. And so we've actually dealt with situations where executives deleted messages even though they should have stored them and handed them over.
You blinked 14 times.
Interpret that how you will.
Chair Khan, I knew it. You've seen the same stuff the Saudis saw. You are every tech oligarch's least favorite person next to their wife and children. As of this interview, there are over 98 Wall Street Journal articles about you. We're shooting this in New York, like down on Wall Street, there's just a bunch of bankers on their Bloomberg terminals screaming at the sky like they're in that Star Trek movie, just, Khan! 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 Do you like that heat?
Look, we protect the public, and it's inevitable that when you're taking on powerful corporations that are breaking the law, there's going to be pushback. And we think it's important to stay focused on who we represent and who we're fighting for, and that's the American public.
Be proud of boys in line over there.
I don't know if you've seen this. This is a meme that's been floating around the internet, okay? This is a high speed.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right. Yeah.
This is pornography for transportation. It is a dream, it is a fantasy. People have said it's creating unrealistic expectations for the youth. But it's all over the internet, and we have to deal with this. Please tell us what we need to do to make this a reality.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is what we're working on, right? It's not going to be a network overnight. I mean, the way you do this is you start putting in the pieces. We're doing the Las Vegas to LA, we're doing another north-south one in California. It's going to take longer, but we've invested a lot in that. There are projects being discussed in Texas, Dallas to Houston, in the Pacific Northwest, and in several other locations where there's a lot more work to be done.
You know my pitch, how this would get done overnight, just like this.
What's that?
Say we're using trains for war. It would get done overnight. If we fought wars with trains, if you want to stop the terrorists, we got to build this train. You tap in the military-industrial complex, whoo, Hyperloop would have happened. Trains for war.
I could try it in Congress.
Just say, if we don't do this, the terrorists win.
Next time I'm testifying in the House, I'll say that.
What makes that meme so sad is there's actually a feeling that we feel like we don't deserve it. It seems like such a pipe dream that as a society we don't deserve it. And there was this quote, very famous Margaret Thatcher quote, that I think about deeply, and obviously Thatcher and Reagan were two peas in a pod. She says, quote, "There is no such thing as a society. There is only individuals and families." To me, it feels like we're living inside of that quote. All the things that you mentioned, EV charging, high-speed railroad, affordable railroad, all of these things are part of a greater society. And what has happened with the American dream is that is kind of ossified and corroded. So it's all about radical individualism. And is there a guiding principle that is a counter to that kind of nihilistic worldview?
Look, the problem with that, it's kind of self-fulfilling, right? If you come in with that worldview and you start undermining the ability of public institutions to deliver, then people notice that their institutions aren't delivering, probably because they've been starved for resources. And then they become cynical about those institutions. And then they become unwilling to vote to have those institutions have enough resources to deliver. It's a spiral, right? But there's an equal and opposite virtuous cycle you can get going. Of course we live in a society. The moment you step on the subway, right, you know you're in a society because you are having a common experience with people who you don't know and who have radically different backgrounds than you, going to similar geographic places to do different social or economic things, whatever everybody is going about their day, whatever you're doing, going to work, going to church, going to meet a friend. And that's true if you're in a big city on a subway, but it's true if you're on a bike path in rural Michigan where I live. Transportation very literally, but also like symbolic, or it connects us, right? And it reminds us of the fact that our experiences are not just things that happen in isolation. Like we travel together with total strangers all the time, whether it's on a subway or on a freeway or on a sidewalk. And our individuals and our individual families interact with each other in our culture, in our society, in our economy, and definitely in our transportation
Do you think there's an
systems.
incentive for it? Say libraries didn't exist. Try pitching the idea of a library in 2024 to any company. They go, this is not profitable. How could we have this be in and they get to keep the books forever, and anyone can use it, and just people can use the internet there. And who's paying for this? Why are we doing this? It wouldn't exist. It simply wouldn't exist. But to me, those are these little moments, the train, the library, where you're like, no, we are part of something greater, a greater collective that's beneficial to everybody. And
so there is this kind of instrumental thing where if we take care of shared things and get them right, whether we're talking about national security or whether we're talking about drinking water or whether we're talking about transportation, like that helps you. But also, when you start talking about things like libraries, we're also talking about not just something that is useful to us as individuals and as families, but also something that helps speak to the purpose of everything else, right? Like, I think it was John Adams who had this quote about, I must study politics and war so that my sons may be at liberty to study things like literature and history. I'm not saying it exactly
John
right,
Adams
but
thought his kids were going to become improvisers in one generation.
Yeah.
They're going to be like screenwriters.
No, the quote actually goes 2 generations deep.
Oh, got it.
By the end, they were into stuff like porcelain, which I guess was like one of the fine arts you would study back then.
Gotcha. Okay.
Obviously, it didn't quite work out that way generationally,
Yeah,
but like the point is, like the more we take care of that in our generation, the more like a future generation gets to focus on like things that are like a higher calling, including culture and thinking, literature. You know, the kinds of things that libraries foster.
Totally. I want to give you something that is long overdue. 2 minutes of downtime. No hurricanes, no bridge collapses, nobody tweeting you about flight delays. Just 120 seconds of being. I'm gonna light the scented candle here. I'm gonna start with just 2 minutes of just no talking. Because I know you have to run to another appearance, so just...
Are
you serious?
There's too many things going on.
You're less than a minute and 20 seconds.
If I'm awake,
Oh my goodness gracious, you couldn't...
there's too many things going on.
Be proud of the boys in line over there.
My question to you, who's the ball handler here?
He played college ball.
Basketball?
Yeah.
How'd that make you feel?
Incredible. Now, in my Instagram comments, Michael B. Jordan wrote, I should have kicked it to Ray Allen for the 4-point play. I decided to take bird in hand. Why don't you play that so you can just see me hit that 3-inch vertical left-handed layup? Yes, my knees are knocking like I'm a baby bird. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the focus it takes to make that layup, and then me slapping the floor. Is that appropriate or inappropriate?
Why do people get so obsessed with the floor slapping? Just because a few Duke players did it at some point?
It was also a high school basketball thing.
Did you do it in high school?
Of course, Blue Devil basketball.
Davis High School?
Davis High.
Yeah.
Up to 10th grade. I didn't play
Up to
varsity.
10th grade. Up to 10th grade.
Why is that funny?
It's just hilarious.
It's not that I didn't try.
I believe you.
We don't even need the last play. Fine, let's do the last play. It's gonna give him a chuckle.
Retired when it was time to go. He's a competitive spirit. Hasan Minhaj inside. Asia Wilson.
This is etched in amber in the blockchain on Getty Images forever. 2 questions. Number 1, is this a foul?
No.
You kidding me?
It's not a foul.
Do you know how hard you have to hit me for that much hair gel to move?
Do you have no right hand?
I do have a right hand.
Like a right hand floater?
I have a right hand layup. Are you?
Like you should have gone to the right hand floater on that one. Just being honest. That's where you messed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a foul.
That's not a foul.
Dude, look at her hip. She's all up in my body. Are you kidding me?
Be proud of the boys in line over there.
Shall I call you Leader Harris or?
Well, Harris is not my name.
I'm sorry, not Leader Harris. Leader Abrams.
I mean,
I'm
you
sorry.
can call me what you want.
Leader Abrams. I got nervous. I got nervous.
Look,
They go open the interview and you have to ask, is it?
Given the emphasis you put on names, that was just really funny.
Bars.
Deeply ironic.
Bars.
I'm
That
just
is
saying.
so ironic.
I'm just saying.
Fuck.
I'm gonna own that for a while.
Nicely
now.
done.
Thank you very much.
Leader Abrams.
Thank you so much.
Leader Stacey Abrams, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This is an honor. This is kind of like the perfect metaphor for your politics. In college, you helped organize the burning of the Georgia flag that had a Confederate flag inside of it. It was like the state of Georgia, and then it's the Confederate flag on the steps of the Georgia Capitol. But before you went to the steps of the Georgia State Capitol to burn the flag, you got a permit.
Yes, that's me in the background.
Yeah, that's you. That's you. That is Leader Stacey Abrams right here. And I believe this is an ashtray.
Yes.
To pick up the ashes.
It was required if you had a burn permit.
So this is both incredibly badass and incredibly dorky.
It caused some concern among my fellow rabble rousers when they.
Where did this instinct come from? Because most people become pragmatic once they have a mortgage. So how did you have this energy when you held no assets?
I'm the second of 6 children. We describe my older sister as she's the captain. The sister who's after me is kind of cruise director. I'm finance and logistics.
Okay.
When you've got to move 6 kids around, you've got to get things done. Someone's got to be the pragmatist. And often, if you want to do something that is crazy, you want to diminish the likelihood that you get caught, and you want to diminish the likelihood that you get in trouble. Mm-hmm. You're still going to do it. You just want to limit the variables. I was going to burn that flag. I don't need to go to jail. I have the right to burn the flag, so get the permit.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Stacey Abrams playbook of protest. As we speak right now, there are thousands of people in the streets that are protesting what's happening right now in Gaza. Do you think those folks are following the Stacey Abrams playbook of protest?
Protest is inherent in a democracy. We are required to speak out. We are required to lift up our voices and demand better of our leaders. That is part of our heritage. It is part of our obligation. How we do so is often determined by the response that we're getting. And there is a desperation that some people feel that they believe can only be met by not just civil disobedience, but criminal disobedience. I do not subscribe to that. I do not think that that is where we have to be. I believe civil disobedience exists for a reason, but I think that it is incumbent upon each of us to not only determine what we need, but determine the consequences we are willing to endure for what we choose. My father was arrested when he was 14 for registering Black people to vote in Mississippi. He understood that he was going to be arrested. He understood that he was likely going to face physical violence from law enforcement, and he chose the consequences. The challenge is making certain that whatever choices we make them with the full understanding that the consequences are not going to be alleviated just because of the righteousness of our belief systems. It is important that we validate the necessity of protest, but that we also recognize that we live in a democracy, we live in a society, and there's going to be a cost to what you do. There was a cost to what I did, and those costs will be paid.
There's this amazing quote, 1967, Martin Luther King Jr. quote.
Every time you move to try to solve the problem, they will respond by saying, you're moving too fast, you ought to cool off, you should put on brakes. And they end up more devoted to order than to justice.
As I've gotten older, I've come to really sit with that and really think about it. Anytime there are protests, Black Lives Matter, climate protests, protests over what is happening in Gaza, people end up focusing on the disorder and not the cause that people are fighting for. What are your thoughts on this long-standing discussion about order versus justice? In other words, just to put it in more simple terms, people, when they see protesters, they're like, why are you blocking the street? I'm trying to get to Target.
We resist disorder because disorder forces us to pay attention to the context of what's causing our discomfort.
Yeah.
Justice should be uncomfortable because justice challenges what we believe we are entitled to and what we believe we've delivered, and it forces us to confront those who have never met justice head on. And so I will always stand on the side of justice. I think that there are steps you can take to make certain as many people as possible can pay attention to you. And sometimes that is by being orderly, it is by paying attention to the rules. But there are going to be moments where you take the risk of going beyond what order can or should allow. And we do so because what is on the other side is so much more important.
Governor Pritzker, thank you so much for welcoming us to this amazing, this is the press room, yes?
Yes.
You are now in your second term as Illinois governor. Are you planning to run for a third term? Or are you planning to walk in the great footsteps of former Illinois governors and go directly to prison?
That's a great question.
We looked this up.
Yeah.
Y'all really got the dog in you. 4 of the last 10 governors went to prison.
Thank God that has not happened to me. It's something I'm trying to change the trajectory
Try to avoid,
of.
yeah. For those of you who are watching that don't know Governor Pritzker, you have spent years fighting for working class individuals and working class values. But you're also the heir to a huge hotel empire. These two things kind of feel in conflict. You've even positioned yourself as a anti-Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much what you said in your DNC speech. Mm-hmm. Okay. You said, Donald Trump claims to be very rich, but take it from an actual billionaire. Huge applause. Trump is rich in only one thing. Stupidity.
Stupidity!
Did you get that joke from a popsicle stick?
I definitely wanted to get under his skin, and apparently it worked. Because a couple days later, he went on Fox and Friends and railed against me, which I find hilarious since I'm not running against him, and he has very little impact on whether I get reelected or not. He lost Illinois by 17 points both times he ran.
But the reason why I brought up this point about your background is so many people on the left see billionaires, no matter how benevolent or progressive they may be or sound, they see them as an existential threat. Some of them don't even believe billionaires should exist at all. How do you personally deal with that tension between yourself, your personal background, and the party? You get what I'm saying, right? You get.
I do, of course,
gotcha.
but I honestly don't try to address what you're describing as a tension.
Because the Republicans, there's no tension. They love it.
I get it, but it's not my job to address other people's underlying biases. I think it is my job to go out and effectuate change in a positive way for everyday, ordinary Americans, right? People who live in my state because I'm the governor of Illinois. So my job is to make sure people earn more, are able to pay their bills, do better for their families, get a better education, save for retirement, hopefully save them from a global pandemic wherever you can.
Yeah, and Governor Pritzker, to be fair, you are nothing like the Republican billionaires. You passed a $15 minimum wage, you ended cash bail, you guaranteed access to abortions, you legalized marijuana, and you banned assault weapons. We literally had to double check that part. I'm like, there's no way he did this. You did it. To get all of this done, Governor Pritzker, you spent over $171 million of your own personal money on your campaign. You're essentially like if Michael Bloomberg was successful at politics. Do you think it was worth it, and would you spend that type of money again?
Yeah, let's start with our campaign finance system is abysmal. We need change. We don't have change now, right? We have Citizens United, which is a decision that is affecting us, has been affecting us for, I think, a couple decades now. And the result of that, just to remind you, you mentioned the amount of money I spent. Yeah. I've had 3 billionaire Republicans spend more than $200 million to try to defeat me. So the idea that I'm, buying my way into office, not fair. Because the first time I ran, many Democrats decided not to run because the billionaire governor of the state, who had been ruining the state, the Republican governor, was going to spend $100 million at least to run.
But Governor Pritzker, isn't it kind of buying your way? And by the way, let's entertain that.
Let's say, here's what's most important. Yeah. We had to defeat him.
Sure.
We had to defeat him.
Yes.
So you can say all you want about what it should look like.
Yes.
I'm telling you what the facts were, which were elected statewide leaders in the state of Illinois couldn't raise the money to run against somebody who could spend what he was going to spend.
So practically what you're kind of saying is, to defeat a bad guy with $1 billion, you need a good guy with $1 billion.
I don't think that's always true. I'm just saying that in this circumstance, we needed to win, and we needed someone who was going to fight for progressive values. And I said I would do that, and I did that. And so I know there are people who want to complain about the amount of money that was spent to defeat him, but you got to remember that he spent $120 plus million. And so, yeah, I mean, I spent what was necessary to win. And if I had not, this state, which had gone 2 years without a state budget, and all the social services were affected by that, literally many agencies just shut down. All of that would have continued on if he had stayed as governor.
Be proud of our boys in line over there.
Can you do an American accent?
No.
Not at all?
Not at all.
When I imitate Brits, it's this very, hello from the UK. It's like that. Hello, governor.
Is that Hungarian?
Or it's very like Jason Statham, like, all right, here's a thing.
Oh, those are the sorts of films you watch, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen the accent challenge on TikTok? An American person will say a word or phrase, and then their British friend will say the same word or phrase.
Yogurt.
Yogurts.
Great.
Okay. Banana.
It's a banana.
Okay. Zebra.
It's a zebra.
Vitamin water.
Vitamin water.
No taxation without representation.
No taxation without representation.
My man. Down with the monarchy.
No, man. I gotta
Come
go back to Heathrow
on!
Airport.
I just want to hear what it sounds like. I'm not going to take you out of context.
God save the king.
God save the king. Insane. What an insane thing to say. Listen, you're on the top of your game right now. I'm throwing you some tough questions. And I don't envy the position you're in. The subtext of being in your chair, oftentimes in my chair, is that we get asked tough questions all the time. We have to get it right. We're going to play a game on Hasan Minhaj Doesn't Know. This is a game that I love.
Yeah, go.
It's called Let's Keep Our Job. I'm going to ask you a series of questions.
Okay.
And I want you to answer it in such a way that you keep your job.
Got it.
Got it? This is a fastball, multiple choice. Do you condemn Islamic extremism? A, somewhat. B, very much indeed. C, unequivocally.
Extremism is extremism, and it's not Islamic. You can be motivated by Islamist ideology, but extremism is extremism.
You're supposed to say C, unequivocally. Number 2, how do we transform Islam into a culture of peace? Ronnie Chang gave me this question.
Is that the question?
That was the question.
Islam is a religion of peace.
Lost your job. Is The Bear a comedy?
I love The Bear. No, what's that all about? Best comedy at the Emmys. What's that all about?
So it's not a comedy. You just said it's great. What's that all about? This was the most. That was the most politician. I don't even know what. It sounds like when you first came to America, you were quite dazzled by it.
And we walked in and I was totally dazzled by it. So I remember being very dazzled by escalators at the time. It's the kind of thing to a kid that was absolutely dazzling. I am still somewhat dazzled by that journey. I was always more dazzled and attracted to America.
I was. I mean, look, I grew up in India. I grew up very, my parents were upper middle class. But, India was one of the poorest countries in the world. America was the richest country in the world. So just that difference alone is dazzling at some level.
Razzle dazzle.
When I came to America, I knew one human being in America, my brother, who was also a scholarship student in college. I had no money because, even if I had, my parents were okay by Indian standards. The currency was unconvertible. So, you're kind of really on your own. And I don't think most Americans really understand, native-born Americans, what it's like. You're 7,000 miles away from your country. Your parents are, by American standards, poor. Nobody here. Of course you're going to try and fit in.
No, I saw your graduation photo with your mom. And it was really, man, it was really heartwarming.
She was wearing a sari.
She was wearing a sari. I go, man, this kid had to really fit in. What would that Fareed do in the 2020s? Would that Fareed be a part of the BLM protests, the anti-Trump protests? Would he be at the Women's March? Would he be at the Gaza protests? Think about that Fareed. Obviously, you have a mortgage now. It's a different Fareed, and you have a different temperament.
Yeah.
But think about that, Fareed.
I think it's a very good question because, one of the points I try to make in the book is that a lot of the people who did things that people thought were radical at the time have been vindicated because, the world moved in their direction. I'm particularly I'm impressed by the women's movement, because it's such a transformation, for all of society, Asian societies, Western societies, Muslim societies, Christian societies, women were second-class citizens. And then over the last 40 or 50 years, that has fundamentally changed. And those people like Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem who took out, who marched in the barricades, they really fundamentally changed society in an incredibly important and positive way. But if I'm totally honest with myself, I would say I don't think I have the temperament. Even then, I would have been the person writing in favor. I would have been the person cheering them on. I would have been the person maybe moderating them a little, saying, don't make too many claims that really piss people off. Let's try and get this reformist. Let's get this part and take the win and move on. So I feel like I in general, I think I've been on the side of causes that have been important, but I'm not the guy who breaks the windows. I'm not the guy who, and maybe it's a failing in me. I mean, I readily admit that. But I'd be the guy trying to, explain it and rationalize it and persuade the people who are not being persuaded. Look, this is actually a reasonable demand.
Your natural sensibility is an optimistic
kind of worldview of America.
Yeah. And part of it is, look, I'm an immigrant. I came here. This country has been great to me. But I also do think that people don't think enough about, maybe it's because I grew up in a place like India. I mean, it's amazing that we live in this country that has so much wealth, that has so many opportunities. I mean, it's extraordinary when you think about the vast scope of human history that most Americans don't realize we're living in the richest country in the history of the world. We're living in a country which has more rights for more people than in the history of the world. That's something to be dazzled by.
Dazzled.
Your journey is incredible. Just look at if we looked at your LinkedIn resume, some of you here in the crew don't know what Governor Moore has done. This is his resume. You were a Rhodes Scholar, all right? Y'all have no idea how hard that is. Okay, there's very few Rhodes Scholars. Your thesis was titled "The Rise and Ramifications of Radical Islam in the Western Hemisphere." I'm just gonna leave that for your Bill Maher interview with Sam Harris. That's the whole thing. Then you went to work under Condoleezza Rice at the State Department in the midst of the War on Terror. Then you will go from there and you work on Wall Street to be an investment banker for Citigroup in 2007.
Yeah.
Shout out to the bailouts. And now you're a Democratic governor.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
And honestly, when I first ran for governor, it wasn't like the party was applauding me. Like, I was not the party's choice.
Okay, but just break this down for me because I want to understand. At what point were you in the break room with Dick Cheney and he's filling up his coffee mug that's just a human skull and you're like, I shouldn't be here. What? Because along the way you worked with a lot of psychos.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I tell you, when I think about the things that I want to do, I think that's what led me to this job. I looked at so many of the policies that were done, not for my family, but to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew early that I wanted to try to find ways of being able to do things for the public because I wanted to fight for people like my mom, who I still to this day believe she deserved better. And for people like my dad, who died in front of me when I was 3 years old because he didn't get the health care he needed.
Right.
And I was like, there's a marked unfairness in the way that societies continue to be built out.
In some ways, I am kind of a little conservative. Like I'm down with authority when it comes to teachers, parents, elders, traditions, places of worship.
Mm-hmm.
That is where I fall a little bit more conservative, Yeah. But the police and military, they oftentimes get their authority from the threat of violence, and that's where it becomes chilling. I have a solution, though.
I want to hear the solution.
So every day at the India-Pakistan border, I don't know if you've seen these videos on YouTube, they have this ceremony called the lowering of the flag. There are soldiers on both sides, and they are just straight up all dressed like M. Bison from Street Fighter. They got the guns are twirling, they're high kicking, and they're just doing this kind of breakdance peacock ritual at each other. So I'm all for military might, but why do we have to lock and load when we can pop and lock? Wes, I've seen videos of you. You're a phenomenal dancer. They have floated around the internet. Why can't we do step up to the streets diplomacy?
Because there are a lot of soldiers who I serve with who should not be popping.
But I'm saying...